Hi everyone, welcome to Moments with Breadhead. We are excited about today. We have a dessert, a soup, and some fried eggplant, but we're going to start with the dessert, which is a lemon cream or lemon curd. This is something that's kind of fun. It's like a pudding that you can eat alone or with whipped cream. You can put it in a pie shell and eat it that way. It's very versatile, so it's a really easy thing to make. It's just a little intimidating at first. We're going to be using a stainless steel bowl, and we'll be cooking the lemon cream over a pan with boiling water. It has about 2 inches of boiling water in it, and this is called a bain-marie in French. It means basically, well, it actually means Marie is bathing, but that doesn't make any sense in English. So it basically means that you're cooking something with steam and not direct heat or not direct contact with anything hot besides the steam. So what we'll do is we'll add the eggs. So I added 3 eggs and 1 egg yolk. We'll add the sugar, and that's a half of a cup of sugar. You want to mix it up really well. This bowl is a little hot, honestly, so you want to make sure that you start with a room temperature bowl so you don't cook your eggs as soon as you add them to the bowl. And then we'll do a half of a cup and 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. Just like that. We got some really beautiful lemons from Social Justice Learning Center today, and we're going to use it to our advantage. So as soon as this is mixed up, I'm going to set the water down a little bit. It should be boiling, so the steam is really hot, but this is also something where you can burn your fingers with the steam. So you want to use a mitt or a towel, as long as the towel's not trailing into the fire and setting your house on fire. And then you basically just cook it like this. So right now, I don't know if you can see this, but it's frothy. It's just like mixed up egg, sugar, and lemon juice. And I'm going to consistently stir this for about 10 minutes, and we'll come back when this is starting to get thicker. We want to cook this ultimately to like 180 degrees, but you don't need a thermometer to do this. What you will see when it's the right temperature is you'll see this thickening to the point where when you use your whisk, it starts leaving trails in the pudding, and it'll be really noticeable when we get there. So I'll see you in about 10 minutes, and we'll check in and see how it's going. Okay, so I've been doing this for about 3 to 4 minutes. It's going to vary depending on how high your steam is, but one thing is for sure, you never want to stop whisking. The eggs are cooking slowly every time you whisk this, and so to avoid having eggs cook too fast and have it being lumpy, you don't want to take your whisk away from this for longer than just to change the oven mitt, because it's really tiring for your arms. So right now, it's not quite ready, but as you can see, it's thickened up a lot, and it's starting to look like custard. I'm going to stir this for like 4 or 5 more minutes, and then it'll be done, and we'll go on to the next phase. Okay, so this is almost ready. What you want to be sure that you've been doing all along is you want to be scraping the sides so that you're not just stirring the middle and the sides aren't getting cooked as well. You want to make sure that everything gets a chance to go into the middle of the bowl, or like basically the direct point where your whisk is hitting. It'll cook anyway. I just feel like why take the chance of it not being completely cooked. So this basically is ready. You can see it's leaving trails. I think I could actually cook this for like a minute longer, and then we will take it off of the stove, and we're gonna let it cool down to like the book or internet or whatever will say like 140 degrees. But basically you just want to let it cool down a little bit, and then we're going to add butter. The butter is in the refrigerator and it's cool. You want to always add cold butter to things like this, because otherwise the butter will melt too quickly and it won't emulsify in your thing, and it'll be like separated and kind of gross. All right, so this is ready. See, it's leaving a trail. It's nice and thick. And I'm gonna take it off of the stove and we'll set it down. So also when you're setting things onto a counter that's hot, make sure that you set it onto something that can withstand the heat. But this is just stainless steel, so I'm just gonna turn that down and I'll keep whisking a little bit just to cool it down now. It's still technically hot enough to keep cooking. 180 degrees is like, I don't know, 320 degrees Fahrenheit or something. So it's pretty hot. It needs to cool down a little bit so we can add the butter. So I'm going to leave it here and I'll go get my butter and we'll be right back. Okay, so we're back. I have some really cold butter and I'm going to just slice it down lengthwise and chop it up into pieces, and we're gonna add the butter little by little and hopefully emulsify it. This might be easier with a blender, but we'll just do it this way and we'll see. You don't need a blender for this. We are using a blender for the soup to make that a creamy soup, so we could be using it, but I like to do it by hand. You just have to really put your elbow grease into it and mix it all up. The heat of the cream will melt your butter little by little. So we're gonna keep on doing this and mixing, and then when the pieces start to melt, we'll add some more, little by little. You could add more than this. I just feel like it's easier to actually get it melted. And if you needed to, if you didn't feel that your butter was melting completely and you needed to heat it back up a little bit in your bain-marie, that would be okay too. You just don't want to overcook it. But as is, I think it's looking really good. I'm gonna add the rest of the butter. Set that aside. And I'll just keep whisking. This isn't actually hot anymore, so. Hey guys, I've been beating this furiously, and as soon as all of the butter is melted and there's no more lumps, you can stop whisking. I think this is pretty creamy, so I think we're ready to go. This will be better if you let it chill for 8 hours, and even I think most desserts are better the next day. I think it gives it time to like settle and really cool and all the good stuff. So I would definitely wait and chill this before you eat it. Nothing wrong with licking the spoon now and then, but this is really something that's served cold. So what I'm gonna do, so I'm gonna clean up the sides, and then I think I'll just use a tablespoon and I'm gonna put some in this little dish. And I'm gonna put that directly in the refrigerator. And then I'll do the same to some in a bowl, and we'll just chill it. If you needed this to chill really quickly, you could lay this flat in a glass dish as thin as possible, get it to be a little cold, and then just like whip it really quickly before you serve it. You could also heat this back up in the bain-marie for like a few seconds if the butter was, because there's a lot of butter in here, so if the butter gets really hard and you can't whip it or like use a spoon with it, you can heat it up a little bit and just whip it again. But I'm just going to put it in there and we'll cover it with plastic wrap and we'll chill it for as long as we can possibly stand to not eat it, and then we'll eat it. There's a little bit left over. I'll deal with that in a second. But so now we have some lemon cream, and we're gonna put this in the refrigerator and we'll be back for plating. That was it. Lemon cream, kind of in a snap. Your arms might be sore, but it'll be tasty. Hi everyone, welcome to Moments with Breadhead. So today we already made our lemon curd, but now we're going to make a cauliflower and onion soup. And thanks to the Westside Church donation, we have some beautiful ramen broth, which I've never put in a soup stock, but it has soy milk in it, and so I think and I'm hoping that this is going to taste good, because basically the soy milk will substitute a cream base and it becomes maybe possibly a creamy vegan broth. We'll see what happens, but let's get started on the soup. We have some onions, which I've chopped up, and we have 3 cloves of garlic. So we're going to start with that, and we're going to saute those in a pan. But first we're going to get the cauliflower ready. So we have this beautiful beast, and I'll just take off the green parts. You can just get your knife in there and cut out the center. It's not like the cauliflower steak that we roasted last week. Those needed to be intact so they wouldn't fall apart in the oven. We can just cut this any old way because basically the onions will be cooked with the garlic before, and as soon as the cauliflower is cooked, which is about 3 minutes or 4 minutes boiling in the broth, it'll be ready. Your soup takes about 10 minutes to cook, 15 tops. So you have a really yummy thing that you can freeze and you can take out whenever you need to, especially when it's cold, even though in LA it seems to be going between a heat wave and really cold, but you never know when you're gonna want soup. It's super satisfying. I'm just gonna chop it up like this. Make sure that the pieces are more or less uniform, but it's not a big deal. It's just if you have really big pieces, that will take longer to cook. So it's better if all of the pieces are essentially the same size so they cook at the same time. You can even cook the stalks, so I'm just going to throw those in as well. We're going to use an emulsion blender to blend this up afterwards, and I'll show you what that is. It's a handheld mixer basically. So that's ready to go. Let's hop over to the stove and start the soup, and let's get to it. Okay, so we're at the stove. I'm gonna add a few tablespoons of oil. I'm using olive oil, just enough to coat the bottom. We're not frying the onions, we're just gonna cook them lightly, and you can dump them right in. And you can also, I'm gonna wait on the garlic for a second, and I'll just use the spoon to mix it up. We just wanna cook them a little bit. What we wanna do mostly is sweat them so they release their flavors. It's not necessarily cooking, it's just getting them right to the point where they start releasing their flavors. And we'll do the same to the garlic, and then we'll add the cauliflower and the stock, and basically you just cook it until it's ready. So I'll leave that. I'll put this cauliflower. That's a big piece. Okay, transfer that back over. There's like nothing better than the smell of onions when they cook. It's so delicious. All right, so we'll just cook these for a few minutes. I think I'll just add the garlic now. We'll add a little bit of salt. The ramen broth is a little salty, so I won't add too much, but it's really good to add salt with everything as you cook. You don't want to oversalt any one thing. You want to add salt to everything so the salt helps release the flavor in the food that's cooking, and the amount absorbs into that particular thing. And if you salt every little thing along the way, your food ends up being like way richer in flavor and needing less salt at the end. If you cook something with no salt, the flavor doesn't really, like, the salt allows the flavor to absorb into the vegetable. So if you don't cook with salt and then you add salt later, you're never really gonna get like enough salt in your food. It's a really weird thing. Like if you salt the water when you're cooking pasta, that pasta is going to have more flavor and need less salt later when you're finishing your sauce than you would if you didn't use salt at all. So I hope that makes sense. But the point is I'm just adding a little salt to release the flavors in the onions and the garlic. I'm gonna turn down the stove a little bit. It doesn't need to be a super high heat. It just needs to be high enough for the onions to start to cook. It takes a few minutes. And it's okay if they brown a little bit. You don't, like the goal isn't to caramelize them, but it doesn't really matter. It'll just add flavor. So they're like pretty much done. I just wanted to release the flavor a little bit, and then I'll add in the cauliflower. I'm not sure if think I'm gonna have to add actually a little bit more than just this. I might add some water at the end, but right now, see, the ramen broth is creamy because of the soy milk, so I have never used it in a soup before, but I think it's going to become a really nice vegan alternative to a creamy broccoli or creamy cauliflower soup. So, you know, it's just to show that you can pretty much use anything that you have on hand in your house and cook. Don't be afraid. You know, I tasted it before, so I know it's not disgusting. It's really good actually, so I know this is gonna be good. But if we end up needing more liquid at the end, I'm just going to add a little water just to keep it vegan since we're already on that road. And I might add a little bit of water right now, actually. Let me just grab some water. The thing about soup is if you're not going off of a recipe, you can't take liquid out. So it's better to cook things and blend it and add liquid later than it is to add too much water, blend it, and you end up with like a smoothie or something, and that's not what we're looking for. So we'll see. It's a work in progress, but that's all we're gonna do right now. We're just gonna cover this and we'll cook it until the cauliflower is cooked all the way through. We're gonna blend it up. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. So the cauliflower, so I didn't salt this. I salted the onions and the garlic a little bit just to release the flavor, and then I added the ramen broth because the ramen broth was rather salty. So ultimately the salt in the broth cooked the cauliflower at the same time. So no other salt was added, and I think that was a good choice. The cauliflower is cooked. I just stuck a fork in it and it went all the way through, so that's all you need to do. And then we're just gonna mix it up. Before I mix it up, I am going to, just to be sure, because it's really annoying. I never really measure my soups, and it's really annoying to blend your soup and have it not be thick enough because you added too much liquid. So you can always add it back, but you can't take it out once it's blended. So I'm just going to add a little bit, I don't know, quite a bit actually. I'm gonna put a little bowl of this broth aside and I'll add it back in little by little. So this is an emulsion blender. It's really fun to have. You can do so many things with it, and you just push the button and it turns on. There's a blade right here, and you just stick it down and you turn it on. This one's old and it was donated, so I don't know what that sound was, but I think we're okay. So you just want to keep like blending it. Sometimes you need to lift it up, especially since there's not that much liquid in here for now. So you'd think, this is actually looking good. I'm really glad I took that liquid out. And you'd think that like I would know better by now after making so many soups, but I never pay attention. So those of you at home, I added an entire head of cauliflower and 2 onions, and I could have added half of the thing of ramen broth, and I think we would have had like a good amount of stock base. So I can save that later. I'm gonna add a little bit in left, but we didn't need that much. I'm gonna add a little bit more. Maybe I spoke too soon. We'll figure it out. We're doing this together. Yeah, so you just keep going until you feel like there's no more chunky bits in there. There's no real right or wrong way to do it. You just blend it. You know what? I am going to use almost the entire thing. So I thought I was wrong, then I was right, then I was wrong. It doesn't matter. So cooking is a fun process, and you can just figure it out as you go. It doesn't have to be serious, and you're not doing it the wrong way. You're just making food. All right, let's get a spoon and see if that's thick enough. So I like this. I think this is a good consistency for soup. Might add like a tiny bit more broth in, but I think that that's great. Just a little bit. And we'll set that aside, and we're gonna start the eggplant now, and we'll come back to this. So to take it off, take this off, I have no idea how. I'm gonna have to come back to that. Usually there's a button and you just like twist it, but I'm just gonna set that aside and we'll come back to that. We're gonna set this aside too. And let's get started with the eggplant. So I'm going to use one eggplant. I'm just going to use it as a side dish today, but these are so beautiful. These are Japanese eggplant. They're much different, similar in texture to like a big eggplant that you would see normally at a store, but they're not as mushy because of course there's less of the inside. So they're really fun to like cut sideways, and you can scrape it out and you can add like a Parmesan breadcrumb butter crust inside, and you can bake it. It's very versatile, but right now we're just going to cook little rounds. We're going to fry those. So I'm just going to cut the rounds. This has already been cleaned, and I'll cut the rounds about 1/2 inch thick, and we'll just do a few. We'll just do those. So, and then on this side, I have one egg that I've whipped up, and I have some herbe de Provence, and then I'm going to add a little bit of salt, maybe just a pinch, and a little paprika because I'm really into paprika right now, but you don't have to do any of this, you can just do the egg. And I'll blend this up. So what I'll do is I have a plate of breadcrumbs, and I'm going to just dip these in the egg first, and then I'll dip them in the breadcrumbs, and I'll just leave them in the breadcrumbs, and then I'll take them over to be fried. So we'll just take that out, and we'll dip the eggplant. I just throw it all in there. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be like one at a time. It's not going to break. Maybe French toast is something that you'd probably want to dip one at a time, but eggplant is pretty sturdy. So I'm just going to get it wet with this egg mixture, and then I will dip it in the breadcrumbs. So there's definitely enough breadcrumbs to make more, but we're only going to make these. All right, so these are ready to be fried up. We'll take it over to the stove and we'll do that, and then we're ready to plate. Be right back. Hey, we're back. So we're going to fry up the eggplant. I have some oil again. We are frying this, so I'm going to add like a quarter, I don't know, looks like maybe 1/2 cup of oil. We're gonna get it really hot. We're not gonna get it too hot that it like fries so quickly that the eggplant doesn't get cooked, but we will cook this until it's golden brown on each side. And it might be a little al dente in the center, but we also have a little plate filled with paper towels just to catch the extra grease like you would with bacon or any other thing that you were frying. And the fan just went off. It's so loud, but as soon as we start cooking, it's going to go back on again. So there's a lot of noise in the kitchen. You'll have to bear with us, but like I always say, it's a working kitchen. So just to test the oil to see if it's hot enough, you can just add a little bit of breadcrumbs, and it's not. Once that starts to sizzle, you know that we're ready to fry the eggplant, but it is ready to go. We'll just
it's the last one, that one.
Flip it over a little bit because it does absorb moisture. So we'll get it dry on that side too. Let's see. Now that's ready. So I think that's ready. I'm going to add the eggplant. Set that aside. And then I'm going to turn down the heat a little bit because we want it to cook light golden brown, but we don't want it to burn before the inside is cooked. So it kind of takes a little finesse. It's like bacon, like right when you think it's cooked perfectly, when you take it out, it actually cooks more and you can burn it. So it's kind of the same thing with anything that you're frying. grab a fork. This is a cast iron pan, so you can use a fork and you can use a metal spatula, anything you want. Obviously, if you were using any kind of Teflon or non-stick ware, you'd have to use a plastic spatula. Be really careful of that. So this is frying up really well. I'm gonna turn it down a little bit. It's already golden brown on this side. That's like more than golden brown, but it looks really good. And now I'm gonna turn it down a lot and just cook it a little bit more. And when it's the right color on this side, we'll just put it onto the plate and we'll be ready. This really doesn't take very long. It's a 2 or 3 minute cooking process. It took 1 minute really to make all of the cuts and add the egg to the thing. So you can really, this is a great accompaniment to any meal because it looks good, it tastes good, and it takes like no time at all to cook it. So we'll check it. And that's ready. I don't know, I think it is actually ready, which is great because it's golden brown on the other side. Cook it for like 1 more second. This one is cooked. We don't want it to burn, so. It'd be easier with a spatula. So, let's take it all up, put it on there, and you have fried eggplant. That easy, that simple. Let's go plate it all up.
Okay, let's plate it. So we have kind of like, this is kind of thick actually, but I like my soup, my puree soup a little thick, so it's gonna be okay with me. And then I'm just gonna put this on the side. On the side, I'm gonna add a little pepper. And then I'll add a little paprika because I'm really into it right now. And here we go. We have cauliflower and onion soup with a ramen vegan soy base. And then we have the lemon cream. This was our moment with Redhead, and we really hope you enjoy it. See you next time.